Ugly Phil.
You're just doing this for the fun of it.
The Rubber Room.
So, Noel Gallagher, fantastic show in Sydney. We caught up with him Saturday. In fact, Mr. Inappropriate, could you please do the introductions?
Alright, geezer, feel like a bit of a laugh? Bit of a knees up, maybe? Slip into your whistle and flute if you fancy a bit of that business. Cause here in the Rubber Room, it's Noel Gallagher.
I meet you on the rebound, somewhere in between.
Me, I'm always searching for it. And I know when I get it. Sometimes I don't know how to get there. But when I hear it, I know what it sounds like.
Hello, Noel. How are you, mate?
I'm very well.
Tomorrow, off to Blues Fest.
Well, I am one of the foremost blues artists in the world today.
Uncredited, I think, which is unfair.
Absolutely.
I haven't spoken to you about this new project, so if I can go back just to the first album, did you have an idea of how this was going to evolve?
The way that I work, I just take things one step at a time. I'd already written a bunch of songs on the last Oasis tour, and then you just take it in stages. It's like, let's record an album, let's see how that sounds. It came out sounding better than I'd ever hoped for. I was kind of, right, let's try and put a band together, and then let's rehearse. And it all started to fall into place. You know, it quickly took on a life of its own. They only work if the records are good. You know, if I'd have left Oasis and that first album was dog shit and I was just playing a lot of Oasis tunes, it would have been all right, but it wouldn't have got to a second album. It's all about the records at the end of the day, so as long as I keep making good records, I'll be all right.
Did you see who was available? I know you had Johnny Marr there at one stage.
I have Johnny on board full time, but he's kind of a solo artist in his own right now. The bass player called me up one day out of the blue and said, "Do you need a bass player?" And I said, funnily enough, I do. Whoever's available and cheap. Here's who I go for. See, it's not for the good looks.
What about with the saxophone? Was there an element of trepidation when you first approached that?
I'd used brass sections before. Before I wrote those songs, I didn't think of it as a thing. And as the sessions progressed, there was bits in the songs which left gaps for some kind of instrumentation. And I just kept hearing a saxophone player. Yeah. Luckily enough, I know a fucking great one, and I kind of called him up, and down he came. And I let you into a little secret. On the right stuff, it's not actually a saxophone; it's a bass clarinet. It's a different thing altogether. When we got Jim down to the studio and told him, in the case of Riverman, what it was we were looking for, we just played "Wish You Were Here" and "Dark Side of the Moon." Okay. So it's that kind of thing we were after.
You mentioned Riverman was probably the best song you'd written. That was, I think, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think Riverman might be one of my favourite pieces of music I've ever recorded, for sure. Yeah. It's not really for me to say what the best song is I've ever written. That's for fans and that to argue between themselves about. But I think Riverman sounds great. I'm making a record at the minute that sounds nothing like any of that stuff.
Is this for the latest project or something outside of this?
Yeah, I'm halfway through another record. I've 5 songs recorded and 7 written, and it sounds... There's no saxophones on it, let's put it that way.
Are the easiest songs to write the ones that come naturally?
I find with songs that you write really quickly, you tend to go off them really quickly as well. They leave you as immediately as they arrive, but then they keep coming back. You know, like the Dying of the Light, I sat down and I wrote it virtually all in one go, and then I kind of went off that song for a few months, you know what I mean? I'm playing it tonight, and I've kind of got back into it a little bit. But there's no golden rule to songwriting. As long as the song exists, then it must be right. It's up to the people to decide. This is Noel Gallagher, and God knows how I got roped into being introduced by this tosser whose name is Ugly Phil, but I won't be back again either. Goodbye.
If you want to see a photo of Noel Gallagher, go to the Rubber Room Facebook page. And so I was asking him about this collaboration that he's got going on with Paul Weller from The Jam.
Me and Paul Weller have been friends for 20-odd years now. So for his last record, Saturn's Pattern, we'd written a song that we never got around to finishing. Some guy called me out of the blue, I don't know how he got my number, and he was working on this new Monkees album, and I was kind of like, the Monkees? Anyway, they're in their 40 years anniversary, blah, 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 and all that, and they're big fans, and we're asking fans, do they want to write songs? And I was like, me and Paul had the song lying around that we hadn't really finished. So I called Weller and said, what do you reckon about the Monkees? And he said, yeah, great, he loves them. So more work was done on it, and it got finished off, and we sent it to them, and they like it, and I think they're actually in the studio recording it now.
And I imagine Paul would have been one of the bands you listened to when you were younger as well, and I know you did the Paul Simonon 60th birthday. Were you into that punk scene at all when you were growing up?
I still adore the Sex Pistols as human beings, and as a band they're fucking right up there with the Beatles and the Stone Roses and all that kind of thing for me. I've grown to love the Clash the older that I've got. I didn't really check for them at the time. I love them now. I think they're fucking great. And Paul's a friend of mine, and you know, it's great to play his birthday party. It was a fun night, from what I can remember of it anyway.
That particular period was born out of the whole anarchy of, Thatcherism. You know, there was a great deal of anger and politics. Do you think we're going back that way again now with, Jeremy Corbyn and things like that?
I don't like Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's a communist. And I don't like the Conservative Party because they're fucking posh boys. Music now doesn't reflect society. What's the biggest thing in the world? Banal, shite pop music. It doesn't make any sense. Whereas in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, music reflected the times. It was either a narrative of or a reaction to the times young people were living in.
Well, which goes back to the 50s and 60s, Elvis and Chuck Berry and stuff like that. But we haven't seen, since grunge, anything that truly reflects the angst, I guess, and the anger of our generation and those younger than us, I don't think.
No, what you mean? We're living in an era where music doesn't reflect society now in the slightest. I mean, when I say that, I mean popular music, like the biggest bands in the world. Well, there are no bands, but the biggest things in the world was all like hybrid rap, pop, disposable. Well, they don't even have a chorus, no, honestly.
Congratulations on the radio show as well.
Oh yeah, you heard that? Yeah.
What are you playing on the show? To get to pick what you want?
Oh, of course, yeah. I don't do it to tell me what to play.
Let's live in the dream.
Yeah, well,
for me it would be anyway.
I don't really play a lot of music.
There was one song in particular, though, that you could play, that you had the chance to play.
Motorhead by Hawkwind.
Beautiful. Nice to talk to you, mate.
Yes, me too.
You're listening to the Rubber Room podcast. Find us on facebook.com/MMM Rubber Room.